My
Okay.
topic is about commercial participation in open source software development. Uh, Hello, my name is Yuxia Zhang, an assistant professor in Beijing Institute of Technology. It's a great honor for me to present our recent studies about this topic. We all know that open source software has been playing an important role in software industry, information technology, and even our daily life because it is a creative pattern of development and lays solid foundation in different areas. As reported by a recent survey, almost all information technology companies are using open source software in their production. We may still remember that the first stage of open source communities were made up almost of volunteers. They are motivated by interest, skills, or reputation and contributed to the projects on their own will. Over the last decade, open source software has grown rapidly because of the advantage of open source like user innovation, low cost, and high quality. More and more companies are attracted to join the development of open source software. At present, numerous companies have participated in open source and made substantial contributions. Take OpenStack, an open source cloud operating system as an example. We can see that there are a linear trend of the companies contributed in OpenStack each year. For another example, more than 13,500 developers from more than 1,003 different companies have contributed to the Linux kernel project since 2005. This increasing commercial participation might change the open source projects because of the huge differences between volunteers and these paid developers. In the motivation aspect, most volunteers are interest driven, while the companies care more about profits. In the practice aspect, volunteers are free to choose what they want to do, but the paid developers are always aim driving. In one situation, these differences may lead to the departure of volunteers. Moreover, once the objective of companies fail to come true, they may also withdraw from open source projects, which in turn can threaten the sustainability of open source projects. So, it's necessary to have a clear understanding of the development of open source with intensive commercial participation. We start from measuring the degree of commercial contributions, like to what extent do companies contributed to the development in comparison to volunteers. Also, researchers have also found a phenomenon that a small proportion of developers always complete most of the work. So we are curious that are contributions distributed unevenly among the companies at will, and can the unique circumstances of each contributing companies can be grouped into a small number of interpretable contribution patterns or models. If so, what are the models and what's the characteristics they will have? And we know that the high diversity is associated with healthy open source ecosystems. So would the diversity of companies be associated with the health of projects in terms of the volunteer participation? With these questions, we conduct this study. We select OpenStack as our study case because it is an active, mature, and involves many different types of companies. OpenStack consists of various projects to have an intuitive understanding about how an OpenStack release is produced by different types of projects. We manually looked for the documents and the README files of each repository and merged the projects with similar functions. This picture shows the repository categories of OpenStack. We found that commercial objectives will always drive companies' actions when they participate in open source. So we use commercial objective to classify companies. We qualitatively obtained the categories of companies' objective, and after that, we proposed the three metrics to characterize the contribution performance of companies with different objectives. Let's see the results. After calculating the number of developers and commits from companies and volunteers respectively in each version, we found that the companies contributed around 90% of commits and 80% of developers, playing a critical role in the development of OpenStack. We further calculated the fraction of companies that are responsible 80% of the developers and commits for each version, where the companies are ranked by the developers and the commits. And we borrow the Gini coefficient to observe the uneven distribution of companies' contributions. We found that the distribution of the contributions from different companies are uneven, and the concentration of contributions increases over time. After analyzing the online records about a company's objective towards OpenStack, we obtained 8 categories. The first one is full solution oriented, like the Rackspace M. A second one is specific sub-solution oriented. They may only want to do some storage or networking, but not the whole open cloud solution. And the self-business oriented, like Intel, they want to integrate some products with OpenStack. A specific services oriented, like training, and the usage oriented, that's about using OpenStack in their production, so they make contributions to OpenStack. And the community oriented, like the Linux Foundation, and the development infrastructure vendors like Google. The last one is research oriented, like Peking University. We calculated the performance of the 8 contribution models based on the 3 metrics we proposed. Contribution intensity, extent, and focus. We found that the companies providing full cloud solutions always tend to make intensive and extensive contributions. And the companies that contribute to specific projects are either motivated by the specific business goals or are infrastructure vendors who develop softwares that support the development of OpenStack. And we found an interesting phenomenon, like the users of OpenStack will always make extensive but not large by volume contributions, with the main focus on deployment tools. And the community players such as the Linux Foundation and research groups are minor contributors. Overall, the 8 models are unique. We also investigate the relationships between the diversity of companies and volunteer participations by fitting a linear regression model. The result shows that the diversity of the companies in terms of the contribution models is positively associated with the number of volunteers in OpenStack. The second study is about company collaboration in open source software projects. The companies are always excelled in different domains. When they come to the same open source software projects to realize their different goals. Collaborations among companies is common in the development of open source. But a company's contribution strategies is what with hidden in its developers' commits, which is mixed in millions of our commits to projects within an open source ecosystems. So, how all the pieces work together? Does company collaboration have relationships with the efficiency of the company's contribution or the sustainable development of open source projects? In this study, we want to investigate how companies collaborate in the same open source software ecosystems. This aim can be divided into 3 research questions. The first one is, how do companies participate in the projects of an open source ecosystem? The second one is, what collaboration patterns exist within an open source ecosystem? And the last one is, might company collaboration in open source ecosystem can make the companies more productive? We still chose OpenStack as a study case, and we applied social network analysis to explore the collaboration patterns of companies. Several typical combinations occurred while companies participate in the projects of OpenStack. The first layer represents the projects, and the second layer represents the companies. The nodes with the same color indicates they are grouped into the same cluster. We found that the companies holding the business integration strategy, like Intel, often contributed to the plugins or drivers to integrate their own business with OpenStack. And the companies making profit through full solutions often contributed to deploy tools. The clusters always centered on the large information technology companies like IBM, Huawei, and the companies that select specific projects to contribute to are driven by their particular business or focusing on the business on the basis of one project, or they just incubate a new projects in the open source ecosystem. We found that most companies like to collaborate with each other, even with competitors. Some collaborations are intentional and actively pursued, whereas others are passive and incidental. And some companies may still be the solo contributors to some projects. In particular, when those are specific to the company's base product or their own interests. We also fit regression models to investigate the relationship between companies' productivity and the position in the company collaboration network. And we found that the position of companies in the collaboration network is positively associated with their productivities when making contributions to OpenStack. Our studies have rich implications. The 8 contribution models and the 3 collaboration models can be used as a guide to help companies develop or adjust their open source participation strategies. The dimensions can assist the open source communities to take actions upon several potential risks, such as volunteer turnover. Several combinations of the companies and projects offer a picture of how hundreds of companies participated in thousands of repositories, forming an open source ecosystem that delivers a complex product. Also, the 3 collaboration patterns open the black box of company interactions in open source ecosystems. Okay, this is all my presentations. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?